Good morning, and thank you for joining me for H3 TV on weathering the storms of your life, personally, professionally, and literally with hope, health, and happiness. Every week since COVID started, I have tried to come to you and say, how can I pour into you, encourage you, inspire you, love on you, lift you up, and remind you you're not alone in the challenges of life, as I like to call the storms of our life that we all face in small and large ways. As I continue to write my eighth book about weathering the storms, we think about storms as, is it a category one, maybe a three, maybe a five? And just because you define it in one way doesn't mean everyone has to agree with you. And nobody gets to just tell you how much that storm's going to affect you. Storms affect us all differently. And as they affect us individually, we bring all of ourselves to the workplace. So I appreciate you being with me on H3 TV. Remember that you can ask questions or leave comments. As we go through the show, we will try to address them as they come. And if not, I will certainly respond to them later on, whether you find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing my friend Lynn. Please help me welcome to the stage, Lynn. Good morning, Lynn. Thanks for
Good
being with
morning.
us.
Good morning, Annie. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So happy you're here. So tell us about who you are, where you live, and what do you do, Lynn?
Sure. So I live in Phoenix, Arizona, which is a beautiful place. I am a true Zoni. That is someone that's a native and a desert rat. I studied hotel management at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Um, my dad found that for me because I just couldn't imagine doing anything like everybody I knew. I couldn't imagine doing that for the rest of my life, but I just loved planning meetings and events. When I got up there to UNLV, I had never met so many people that thought like I did. It was such an anomaly. And I never thought to leave, and I knew no one when I got there. So I had a very nice career in hotels. I've washed dishes, I've made guest rooms, I've delivered luggage. I've worked the front desk when Braniff Airline went down at the DFW airport. That was exciting. Um, and made my way back to Phoenix. And then I've had a focus on meetings and special events. Um, and then my mom passed away. So I had to re career myself because my dad needed a little more attention. So I took that big leap and went off on my own and kind of found my way. I like to do business development for unique boutique companies in the meetings and event industry.
Oh, fantastic, Lynn. Sounds like fun. I forgot to ask you earlier, have you had a chance to watch my TEDx on lessons from a pineapple? As you know, in the hospitality industry, pineapple is a symbol. Have you had a chance to watch that TEDx?
I watched it twice.
Oh,
I also have in my house, I would get up and show it to you, a little sign that says, always be like a pineapple,
mm.
stand tall, wear a crown, and be sweet.
Oh, I love that. I've started kind of a pineapple movement. And so now I have these bracelets that says I will see value and be sweet. And people wear them. And I have pineapple erasers and pineapple candies. Just like, what if we were all pineapples? The world would be an amazing place. Anyway, I don't want to focus too much on pineapples today. What I wanted to focus on is you. So, Lynn, how do you define storms? Because I think when we're going through those detours and changes, like you did when your mom passed, sometimes those feel like storms in our body. So how do you define a storm?
Well, Annie, when I define it as depression, unable to move forward. I like to crawl into bed for like the weekend and kind of decompress. Some people are take action people. I am not. I have to really feel the pain and feel the sadness and
Mhm.
embrace everything that's happening to me. I got married late in life, and when I first got married, I had a little bad spell, and I crawled into bed and I couldn't function. My husband called my best friend. He goes, "What am I gonna do? I've never seen her like this." And she goes, "Oh, don't worry. Give her 2 more days and she'll be fine." So I need to chill, and sometimes I need to watch really bad TV and let the good part of my brain do the creative thinking so that I'll be able to take the next step.
I love that. I think that that's how you kind of deal with storms, right? And there's no right or wrong way to do it. And as I have kind of processed and starting to write this eighth book about storms, my first, I love acronyms because it's how I remember things, but the first S stands for stillness and silence. And I love, Lynn, that you give yourself permission. And it sounds like you have an amazing best friend that like, this is who she is, and she's going to do this, and she's going to be okay. And I think allowing ourselves to sit in that stillness and silence, or with, I like to watch rom-coms, sappiness, whatever it is, and allowing yourself to just not try to quickly bounce back, because it also gives us space and time. So what has been one of the greatest storms in your life, Lynn?
I was thinking about it. I've had so many because, Annie, I am not a corporate personality. So, and in my day, you had to fit a certain mold and a certain model, I'm a shorter woman, I'm fuller breasted. So I didn't look good in those white button down shirts and suits. And in my day, we had to wear pumps, right? And pantyhose, and just even my energy that I gave out, people found it really offensive. So I didn't really do well in a corporate environment. And I really exited a lot. And then you feel like, what is wrong with me? But the truth is, you need to find the person that appreciates what you have to offer instead of changing who you are internally. I think that is a very big storm, to get to the point where you acknowledge that I'm very okay. I have lots of gifts and you don't. So
yeah, you're so funny because you're like aligning with my book so well, and I'm like, I did not say any of this to her. So the word that I think of right now with you is you gave yourself time, and in time comes wisdom. And what you realized is you were not being authentic to yourself. I so love this, and I love when I meet people that grow out of that. Like, wait a minute, I'm not a white button down suit pump woman, but I'm still brilliant and strong and smart and capable. But that's not where I thrive. I feel buttoned up and I feel uncomfortable. And then they misunderstand me. They take me wrong, and they try to transform me into being who they think I should be, but that's not who I am. So I think that time has given you wisdom, because when we're younger, we feel so told and that we need to fit in. And I think when it doesn't feel right to us, it's like we're never settled, because we're always like, oh, I should be buttoned up. I should be this. No, stop shooting on yourself. That's not who you are. And sometimes we have to, Lynn, take those careers because we need them to support ourselves or support our family. But when we get a little wiser and a little time has passed, and we can say, you know what, I am going to use my gifts, and I'm going to be truly who I am and serve the world better by not trying to fit into a mold. And people will like me better because I like myself better, because I'm living out who I truly am. So, all right. Okay. So in the midst of that storm, trying to fit into corporate America, being frustrated and young and not feeling as buttoned up as the world, how did you stay hopeful? How did you survive that and get through that and stay hopeful?
And I think about that too, Annie, because how did I do that? Right. I mean, you feel like you're so different from everyone. You feel like there's got to be something better out there. How do you get through it? So, I think a lot of yoga.
Good job. Movement. Yes.
And then I did at one point in time, I had a very bad storm. I was dating someone who committed suicide. And I think I went to go work for a friend for a year, and literally I did nothing. I made phone calls for him. Email was just coming into vogue then. So I did emails for him. He owned a swimwear publication. And then one day I woke up and I wanted my life back. So I just reached out to someone I knew, and I got a job that I really loved. I worked as the director of development at a private high school, doing fundraising and special events. And I thought, wow, that is so lucky that opportunity opened up when I was ready to be there and accept it.
Yeah. And I think you were doing something. So give yourself a little credit. Maybe you weren't doing as much as you could, but you were making phone calls, you were learning, and you were giving yourself time and space to figure out what you were supposed to do. And even as you were talking, I saw you as you were a fish out of water when you were in that corporate America. And then you felt like people were judging you, and then you were judging yourself. And then we're never our best. We start to get smaller, but we're meant to not be small. We're meant to be bold and brave and unapologetically who we are. And I always say the most authentic people recognize we all have messy parts and we're all different. And sometimes I hear people say, I don't fit in. I don't fit in. I was on Instagram yesterday and there was like a whole video about this woman. Like, have you ever felt like you didn't fit in and you didn't belong? And I think the truth is that not always we talk about, especially when we're young and we're trying so hard to fit in, we're not meant to fit in. We're meant to all
Exactly.
be different. We're meant to stand out. We're meant to shine. And if I conform to be like you and you conform to be like her and she, well, then none of us stand out. But if we all decide, here I am, I love orange, I love bright colors, I love singing loud, off key, I like who I am. Well, it makes it a lot easier for the world to like who you are, right? So I love that.
Exactly.
I love that you were strategizing. What do I have to do? What can I do? Okay, I'm going to make phone calls for someone for a while. Okay, I'm going to do this. But you weren't doing nothing. You were just in the process of discovering events at a high school would be so much more rewarding and fulfilling to you than sitting behind a desk making phone calls. So,
Right.
So how did you stay healthy? You mentioned yoga, but we know when depression comes in those storms, it's easy for many people to get stuck in that storm. So how did you stay healthy and give yourself a few days, but then move out of it and get on with your life? How did you stay healthy?
So I'm not thin or in great shape at all, but I have always, in fact, my two brothers as well, I have always worked out. Not, fanatically. Like if I'm busy that day, I don't get up at 4 in the morning to go to the gym, but I like to make it there at least twice a week and then do yoga once a week. I also love to bake.
Mm.
So and I'll tell you a funny story in a minute. So I did, after I left the high school, I owned a cookie store, and that's how I met
Oh,
my husband.
I love
And then I was not a good business owner. So, and I was in business with my mom. So that was a whole nother storm. But right about that time, my best friend got me a gift certificate to a very nice kitchen store, and I bought 4 sheet pans, some measuring cups, some measuring spoons, which I still use today. So I was just going through something, which I'm happy to talk about in a minute. And so for the past 5 weeks, I baked different cookies. So I was with my best friend, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Marilyn, who knew that 17 years ago you got me something that would still bring me joy and pleasure today?" And
it.
her response was, "I'm just glad to see you baking. That means you're getting back to who you are."
Yes, I love that. I think two things you said there. So for me, always, I was a gym owner for 12 years. I owned 2 gyms. I was always, please work out because it makes you feel good, because movement's medicine, not to be thin, not because of a number on a scale. Do it as a privilege, do it as our body's healthy enough to move. So you said movement, and I always believe movement's medicine. But the second thing you said is pursue a passion. And your passion was baking. I also love to bake, and I love silly movies. I like the movie Bridesmaids. And when the guy buys her the baking gifts again and says, remember, you loved this, but she had lost her love for it because of a breakup. Instead of she lost her passion. But when we get back to our passion, whatever that is, painting, baking, playing games, I just think it brings us joy. It brings us back to who we are and the things that we love. And there's no right answer. And I love, Lynn, that you said you're going to move your body twice, 2 to 3 times a week when possible, because it feels good. You and your brothers do that. I love that habit of movement, intentional. It's kind of saying I'm worth it. It's kind of saying I'm going to take care of myself. So I love that. I love the baking. One of my greatest joys is baking and then giving it away to neighbors, baking
Right.
mini loaves of banana breads or cookies, or showing up with a surprise for somebody of a baked good. And I love to eat sweets as well. So I have to be careful sometimes, but I love that. How did you find happiness and humor in the midst of the storm? Like even now, as you described the button-up shirt, it seemed like you giggled a little, because we know not all of our bodies fit perfectly into button-up shirts, right? There's different shapes and sizes. I like V-necks because that fits my body better than a
Right. I
tight,
love a good V-neck. Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Yeah. So how did you find happiness and humor in the storms in your life?
And that's so funny that you asked that question, Annie, because not everybody knows when you're joking. So I have a very different sense of humor. And I have found that people take you seriously and they think that you're ill natured because they are. And so that was a good lesson that I had to learn as well, especially in the corporate world where people are trying to claw their way ahead and not really helping each other out like it should be. I just sometimes you just have to laugh at where you're at. I remember when I was going through a different store right when my mom died, and oh my gosh, I interviewed for all these jobs and I didn't get any of them. And then I got this job that was just not a good job. But a year later, none of those people had the great jobs that I wanted, but I still had the not so great job. So you have to think about that. And you have to look back, and I think, wow, so many times what you want and you don't get, and you're so depressed. And then you have to step back, and a year later, and you realize it was a blessing that I didn't get that.
Right. Yeah.
It was, God had a different plan for me in mind. So right now, after COVID, my clients, because I do business development in the meetings and event industry, none of my clients needed business development. They needed employees. And so I had a very big personal lull from like last October until February. And even though I'm married and you have that support, you still are thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Maybe I have to give up my career. Maybe I have to go answer the phone somewhere, do customer service, which then you're going back into the corporate world, even though today, when you walk into that environment, they're like, grab your coffee, grab your donuts, sit down, make 1,000 calls. We're going to bring in lunch. So it's very different. And I just kept my NSA chapter. They really kept me alive. They gave me energy, because that is one platform where you can be true and honest and authentic, because everyone there, no matter how you perceive their success, they have also gone through storms. And then one day, twice, the phone rang with clients that were better than I could have dreamed of. So I think now I feel like I started with both of them March 1st, when we're into May now. So I kind of feel now, like I said, I've started baking again. I'm active again. I'm, a little more lighthearted, not so worried about money, because that's a long time, when you're self-employed, Annie, that's a long time to go without income.
That's right.
And before COVID happened, I was so proud of myself. For the first time in my life, I had 6 months in the bank, cash saved. Right? I mean, think about that. How many times did you want that? I always felt like Carrie, who had all the shoes, right?
Yeah, Carrie Bradshaw.
The City, right?
Yes.
All of her friends had money, but she had a great shoe collection. And so I kind of felt like that. Like I wasn't always so smart about money till I married my husband. So yeah, I mean, you have to just look at life differently. I had that great support of my husband, but we don't dialogue like you do with your girlfriend or someone that's in your industry. And even though they're trying to tell you something great will happen, it's hard internally to do that. And I give myself permission to lay in bed and watch the Hallmark Channel or read a good John Grisham novel. I don't feel like I've met a lot of people who always feel like they need to be doing something. I'm going to be blogging. I'm going to be writing an article. And I always think, why am I not an A+? Because I'm not. I'm a B+. And I feel so confident in myself because of these 2 new clients that really take advantage of my experience, my wisdom, my insightfulness, my intuitiveness. And I think that those are things in corporate America that they don't know how to gauge you. Because when you're intuitive about something, you have this thing going in your head and you don't know why nobody else can see it.
Yeah. You said a couple of things there, Lynn, that I just want to repeat. One is that you said, look back. And I'm a huge believer in we have to look back to look forward. Look back at how far we've come. Look at all the other obstacles we've overcome. Look at where we are compared to where we started. All of that. So you said, look back. This is how you stay happy. And the second thing that I think you said that's so important is go to the right communities. So it's not always seek anybody or seek somebody. It's seek the right people. And you said my NSA community is authentic. They've all been through storms. They get it and they cheer me on. And that brings cheeriness to your life. And so I think getting the right support, I always think go to the right support. And if you can't find it, create it. So in my old neighborhood, we created a Bible study, a bunco group, a book club, a Easter egg hunt, whatever it was that I created. I might start something if I can't find it. A single parents group years ago, I started, I'm starting like an emotional humor speaker group right now. Like, create what you need if it doesn't exist, or go find it, but make sure it's authentic people that aren't going to judge you or shame you. So one other question I had for you, Lynn, is as you look back over your life and different storms you've been through to get you to this point, what is one lesson you learned that surprised you? And another thing you said is for unanswered prayers, which always makes me think of Garth Brooks' song, Unanswered Prayers, because I think sometimes we are hoping, I want this job. I want this person to date. I want this promotion. And maybe there's a better one right around the corner, and being patient is so hard. And
so hard.
So hard. So what's a lesson you've learned through your storms and through your life that you wish the listeners, if they're in a storm, if they're approaching a storm or coming out of a storm, what's a lesson you'd like to give them?
I think you have to embrace it. You have to acknowledge that it's happening, and it's going to happen. And you can't really, I'm a meeting planner, and my first instinct is to be a control freak and a micromanager. And then to look at anything I can do to prevent something bad from happening. But that is anti-storm. So I think I've learned that sometimes you just have to let it happen. You just have to crawl into bed, or some people like to go for a run or a bike ride. I don't get that, but, lay out in the sun, whatever it is, and then wait for everything to fall. So this past February was the vortex of everything bad that could happen. And then a couple of more things happened. And this was the first time I thought, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to wait 2 days and see what's going to happen next. And then at that point, of course, 2 other things happened, but okay, I'm still standing. God, I am still standing. You can keep throwing that down at me, but I know I am here and I'm going to make it through. And so maybe the first day you wake up and take a shower and check your email, and then at noon you crawl back into bed. But slowly you're going to feel that warmth. That energy is going to come back to you. I actually was in such a lull, and I hate to admit it, but I rearranged all the crystals in my house. And then I saged my house. I honestly saged my house, hoping that whatever the bad juju would leave. And like I said, and then it happened, it wasn't the day that I saged the house. It was the process was already happening. So I think the one best piece of advice, and I hated this guy for telling me this. He said, Lynn, when it looks like everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place differently. So I think that is my little best tip.
I love that. Falling into place differently. The other thing you said that I think is so important, and I really believe it is truly emotional health, is acknowledge what you're feeling and accept what you're feeling without apology. And I think so often we think, no, I got to pull it together. I got to keep going. I don't want anyone to know I'm struggling. I don't want anyone to know it's hard. I don't want to. And I think when we just say, you know what, it's hard. It's not going to always be hard. It's going to get better. Things are going to fall into place. And so I like how you authentically honor that when life is hard for you, you give yourself a break. You allow yourself to feel what you feel. Because when we suppress it, and I watch this so much at the gyms, is that people would be resentful, people would be sad, people would be depressed, they'd be angry, and they'd hold it in. And it would literally make them physically sick. And I was like, okay, don't do that. Acknowledge it, release it, don't apologize, and let yourself feel for a couple of days and then move on. Get on with your life. It's going to get better, but feel what you feel while you're feeling it. So Lynn, this has just been fabulous being with you today and all your wisdom you've shared. One more question before how are you using these storms you've gone through to help other people? Are you mentoring? Are you coaching? What are you doing? And maybe it's just walking alongside someone who's in their own storm, but what are you doing with the wisdom you have, wisdom and experience to support others with the storms you've been through?
Annie, I am so incredibly fortunate. I have taught at our community college for 16 years, and I am teaching at Northern Arizona University now. And one of my students, I'm going to cry when I tell this story. She just graduated with highest distinction and honors yesterday.
Oh my
And
God.
not only that, I encouraged her to get involved in one of our industry associations, and she got her first job in the industry. And she didn't have to do anything. I introduced her, people talked to her, there was an opening, and I thought my life has never been that easy. But thank God I could do that for Erica, you know?
Yeah.
And whenever I see her, she can't thank me enough. So I love when my students get great jobs. I was just at another event where a student was, when I had him, he was a bartender. Now he's the assistant general manager at a hotel. So that is one way that I give back and mentor. But one of my clients that I have now is a nonprofit, and they have a speakers bureau, and all the speakers are living with a disability. And I get to use all my knowledge, everything I've had my whole life, to recreate the infrastructure. And then it's not a secret, I love making a good cold call. So that's my superpower.
I
So
love
I get to help build this super great business that has such purpose and adds so much to the community, the disability community.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I'm celebrating Erica with you. I'm cheering her on. Congratulations on graduation, on a job, Erica. Well done. And thanks, Lynn, for supporting her. And again, I do love to share my TEDx lessons from a pineapple with the hospitality industry. So if you ever want to share that in a class or with people that are going into that, I think it's like this simple nugget that reminds you it's beyond hospitality. It's literally looking up. And for me, someone who travels a lot for work, every time I go to a hotel, it's my home away from home. So when that front desk makes me feel welcome and like,
Right.
we're glad you're here and you're going to have a safe time and you're going to sleep well in this home away from home, I cherish it and I do my best to honor it. So Lynn, I know people loved what you had to say, your wisdom, your honesty, your authenticity, your vulnerability. What is the best way for someone to get a hold of you or connect with you if they have questions or comments with you?
Sure. The best way would be LinkedIn.
Okay. Pretty
Lynn,
active on
and I'm the only Lynn Wellish, so you don't have to like, and it's Lynn with an E because I'm excellent. Thanks.
Oh, I like that. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Lynn, on H3 TV, where we share how to weather storms with hope, health, and happiness, because we all have storms of all different categories. And we know we need each other and we need to encourage each other in our storms. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to share this with your community or to reach out to Lynn or I if you have questions, comments, or need some encouragement. Take care and thanks for being with us.